"Take the matter of time as we figured it out that day," he said. It was 4 o'clock when Miss Emily Lancaster ran out that side door and fainted on the grass. It was 3:30 when Mrs. Talbot left and the old lady turned over to take her nap. How much time had anybody in that house had to clean up a mess and get rid of a lot of bloody clothes? Whoever it was hadn't burned them and they couldn't hide them. We didn't merely examine that furnace, one of our operatives crawled inside it, and we had the devil of a time getting him out. And this, so far as the police were concerned, was the situation up to 6 o'clock that night when, Margaret being the calmest of the lot, they showed her the axe. She went white and sick, but she identified it at once as belonging to the household. Normally it hung, from May until November, on 2 nails in the woodshed at the back of the lot, a woodshed which was purely a shed, having a door which usually stood wide open from one year's end to the other, but which Evan had noticed the day was closed. Investigation inside the shed, however, revealed nothing to show when it had been entered. The nails were there, the axe gone. Nothing else had been disturbed. The narrow shelf where Miss Margaret potted her plants for the porch roof and for the house in winter showed nothing save the usual crocks and a heap of loose leaf mold. There was no sign of blood, nor of any stained clothing, anywhere in the shed. It was the discovery of the ownership of the axe that finally convinced the police that the crime had been an inside one. But nobody mentioned the gold, or intimated that it was in the house until approximately 10 o'clock that night. Then Emily Lancaster suddenly broke down under their questions and admitted that Jim Wellington had been near her when she recovered from her fainting attack in the garden. With that, Peggy was recalled and broke down, and, as the inspector would have said, the fat was in the fire. Chapter 7. Out of that interrogation, of family and servants, certain statements were finally collected by the police and put into shape. Copies of these I now have, and as they illuminate the events of that day far better than I can repeat them here. I have stripped them, of course, of inessentials and repetitions, but they are correct in every other respect. That of Emily Lancaster, as being the one who found the body, I give first. Mother had been restless all day. She felt the heat terribly, but an electric fan gave her neuritis, so I fanned her a good bit of the time. Except that I slipped over to the library in the morning to change that book I was reading aloud to her. I hardly left her at all. Indeed, I had not even a chance to clean my bird until Lydia Talbot arrived after lunch. Mrs. Talbot came in at 2:30, and she relieved me of the fanning for a while. We sat and talked, but I thought that something Mrs. Talbot had said had annoyed Mother, and I was relieved when she went away. I went downstairs with her, and we met Father in the hall and they left the house together. I closed and locked the front door, and then went back to the kitchen porch for a glass of ice water. Jenny was there, cleaning the silver, and Ellen was beating up a cake. As I went up the back stairs, I thought I heard the housemaid in one of the guest rooms. It was a sound of some sort. I called. "Peggy, is that you?" No one answered, so I looked into the guest rooms, but they were empty. All that took about 5 minutes. I then went to Margaret's door. I knew she meant to go out and was afraid she had fallen asleep. I asked her if she would listen for Mother while I changed for the afternoon, but she said she was going to take a long shower to get cool before she dressed, and that she had just seen Mother, and she was asleep. I went on forward to my room and took off my dress, but just then I thought I heard Mother pounding on the floor with her stick, which is the way she often calls if she thinks I am downstairs. There is a bell over her bed, but it rings in the kitchen. I put on a dressing gown and went across, but she seemed to be asleep. I know that nothing had happened then. I left the door partially open, and went back to my room. I know the exact time, for I looked at my clock. I like to be dressed for the afternoon by 4, and it was not quite 15 minutes before 4. I dressed as fast as possible. My bird is a great singer, and he was making so much noise that once I opened my door and listened, for fear Mother was awake. She did not like birds much. I heard nothing, and so I finished dressing. It was almost 4 when I was ready. I went across to Mother's room, but I did not go all the way in. I saw her and I think I screamed. Then I ran back to Margaret's room, but I had to go all the way into the bathroom, for the water was running and she did not hear me. After that I ran down the stairs and out into the yard. I don't know why, except that I had to get away somewhere. That was Emily's story, told in fragments between attacks of hysteria, and in some ways the most fully detailed of the lot. neither in it nor in the others, until the situation was forced, did any of the family mention the dead woman's hoard. Partly I dare say it was pride, the fear that the newspapers would exploit the fact, partly it must have been because of their unwillingness to involve Jim Wellington. And it must be remembered that at that time the police still attached no significance whatever to the wooden chest under the bed. Margaret's statement, which followed Emily's, is less exact as to time. This was my afternoon off.